You ever get that gut feeling like something's not right, but you can't put your finger on it? You wake up every morning, cook breakfast for someone who barely looks up from their phone, fold their laundry while they scroll through Instagram, kiss them goodnight while they lie there texting someone else. And deep down, you just know. That's how it started for me. But trust me, how it ended. Oh, that's the part you'll want to hear, because by the time I was done, they weren't just left with love letters and beach selfies. They were drowning in debt that wasn't even theirs. And no, this isn't just another divorce story. It's a masterclass in poetic justice. Stay with me, because I promise, the answer you came here looking for, you're going to get it. Now, before we go any further, let's get one thing straight. You clicked on this video for a reason. Maybe your gut is warning you too. Maybe someone in your life is already giving you that look, that distance, that sudden gym membership and new cologne. Or maybe you're just here for the tea, the revenge, the twist. Either way, I've got you. And if you've ever been lied to, left behind, or made to feel invisible, what you're about to hear is going to feel like your own personal therapy session, only juicier. And hey, if you've ever wondered what happens when a woman stops crying and starts calculating, keep watching. Because once I show you how the tables turned, you'll never see, happily ever after, the same again. We've all seen it, right? The movies, the gossip, the tabloid headlines. Successful businessman ditches wife for younger, hotter version. It's almost cliché now. But behind every headline like that, there's a story no one tells. A woman whose life was built around someone else's dreams. A woman who gave up her career to raise his kids, stayed through the stress, the debt, the sacrifices, just to be told one day, it's not you, it's me. Or worse, I just need to find myself. Funny how men always need to find themselves in someone 20 years younger wearing a push-up bra and calling them babe while asking for a new iPhone. But this time, the story didn't end with tears and therapy. This time, it ended with receipts, literal and emotional, and I made sure the girl who took my husband got the man she deserved, along with every financial mess he ever created. So don't go anywhere. Trust me, you haven't even heard the good part yet. Let me take you back. 3 years ago, I was the wife who did it all. His appointments? Scheduled. His diet? Monitored. His shirts? Pressed and lined up by color. I was that woman, the rock, they called me. But being a rock meant I kept things steady while he flew. At least that's what I thought. I believed in building together, saving together, dreaming together. But the thing about building a life with someone is you have to make sure they're not secretly building an escape plan behind your back. You ever had your whole world cracked open by a text message? I did. One morning, while packing his suitcase for a business trip, his phone buzzed, and curiosity got the best of me. It wasn't a business contact. It wasn't even work-related. It was a photo of her, blonde, tanned, 20-something, with a caption that read, "Counting the days, red heart." And just like that, I knew. Everything I believed, everything I built, was a lie. Now, this is the part where some women break down. Cry in the shower. Call their moms. Some beg. Some fight. Me? I froze. But only for a moment. Because I remembered something my grandmother once told me. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. But don't just believe them. Plan accordingly. So I started watching. Not just him, but the accounts, the habits, the money. Because here's what they don't tell you in romance movies. Love might be blind, but divorce is where your eyes better be wide open. He thought he was slick. Thought I'd cry and crumble and walk away quietly. But instead of reacting emotionally, I went quiet. I smiled at dinner. I folded his laundry like nothing happened. I kissed him goodbye at the airport, even as I knew exactly where he was going. What he didn't know is that I had already hired a forensic accountant. I'd opened a private account in my own name. I'd made copies of every financial document, every debt, every liability, every ugly little secret he thought he could dump in my lap before walking into the sunset with his Barbie doll. He didn't know I knew about the second mortgage he took without telling me, or the loans he took out in our joint names, or the failed investment in a friend's crypto startup that tanked last year. He thought I'd stay silent, stay small. He thought wrong. And here's where it gets juicy. You see, Once the papers were filed and the truth started coming out, he expected me to walk away with the house and a couple of credit cards. That's what his lawyer planned for. But what neither of them realized was, while he was off playing sugar daddy, I was busy becoming the silent CEO of his financial empire, and I knew how to dismantle it one step at a time. Not illegally, not vindicatively, just smartly, just precisely. Just enough that when he handed the keys of his new life to his shiny young bride, what he really handed her was every debt, every unpaid bill, and every financial disaster he once tried to pin on me. But before I tell you how I did it, how I made sure the woman he left me for ended up being the one begging for loans, let's talk about betrayal. Let's talk about what it feels like to be discarded like an old coat because someone else came along with a little more shimmer. Let's talk about how women like us are told to take the high road, be the bigger person, move on with grace. And yes, there's dignity in moving on. But there's also power in protecting yourself, in standing tall, in refusing to walk away quietly from a war you never started. That's why this story matters. Because if you've ever been lied to, cheated on, or replaced, you need to know, you don't have to be the victim. You can be the architect of your own ending. And in my case, that ending was devastatingly beautiful. So here we are. You know the setup. You know the betrayal. You know the players. Me, the wife of 15 years. Him, the man who wanted a new start without paying the price of the old one. And her, the girl who thought she was upgrading, not realizing she was about to inherit something far worse than just a middle-aged man with a receding hairline. What comes next is the twist you've been waiting for. The move that turned the whole game upside down. The reason this story is going viral right now. The moment where everything flipped and the hunter became the hunted. But you'll have to keep watching for that. Because the next thing I'm going to tell you, it changes everything. But I wasn't. And here's the part that gets me. While I was clipping coupons and figuring out how to refinance our home to pay off that second mortgage he never explained, he was taking weekend trips to wine tastings and spa resorts with Melissa, under the pretense of client meetings. The betrayal wasn't just romantic, it was financial, emotional, strategic. He was moving money behind my back, converting accounts, shifting debt under my name. At one point, he even signed me on as a co-guarantor for a business loan I never heard about. And the sickest part? He smiled through it all, looked me in the eye every morning, called me his ride or die. I was dying, all right, quietly, slowly, in pieces he never noticed missing. But I didn't let him know I knew. Not yet. In fact, I played the part so well I even made him think I was slipping into depression, detached, distracted, letting him make all the decisions. I let him believe I was losing touch so he'd get confident, careless. Meanwhile, I was gathering receipts, bank statements, voice recordings, even a hidden camera app on my tablet synced to our home office. You think you know someone after 15 years. You think you've memorized their voice, their moods, their tells. But until you've watched the person you love sit in your living room and whisper sweet nothings to someone else over speakerphone, promising them a future that's built on your sacrifices, you don't know betrayal. And that's when I started noticing something else, something stranger. It wasn't just Melissa. There were others. Messages. Flirtations. Old friends popping back into his inbox. One woman, in particular, caught my attention. Her name was Chelsea. She wasn't young or flashy like Melissa. She was older, elegant, professional. A lawyer, apparently. I found one email where he sent her money, 10 grand wired to her personal account. When I asked about it casually, he told me she was a legal advisor helping with a private investment. The weird part? When I looked her up, she didn't work in corporate law. She specialized in bankruptcy and asset protection. That's when I started to wonder if Melissa was just the visible part of the story, the one he wanted everyone to think was the reason. What if Chelsea, or someone else, was the real power behind the scenes? Someone advising him to reroute his assets, to play the long game, to bleed me dry before leaving? See, that's the thing with betrayal. It's never just one moment, one person. It's a web, a layered, tangled mess of manipulation, secrecy, and carefully crafted performances. And I was done being an audience member in a play I didn't audition for. So I created a script of my own. I started making calls, not to lawyers yet, but to people in his world. His assistant, his banker, even his personal trainer. And slowly, details began to surface. Hints, half-truths, conflicting stories. Like the fact that he had rented a second apartment 2 towns over, supposedly for work retreats. Or that he was funneling company reimbursements into a separate credit card account. And yet, no one suspected him of anything. Not yet. Because he was charming, successful, and played the perfect role in public. But charm doesn't pay debts, and success isn't real when it's built on lies. The deeper I looked, the stranger things got. One day, I found an envelope tucked behind a stack of old tax papers. Inside were 5 prepaid Visa cards, each with a few $1,000s on them. When I checked the purchase history, most of the charges were in locations I'd never been. Art galleries, private clubs, jewelry stores. Who were these for? Melissa? Chelsea? Someone else entirely? And why so secretive? It didn't add up. I started to think maybe he was in deeper trouble than just an affair. Maybe he owed someone money. Maybe the second mortgage wasn't for the house, but for something darker. Something riskier. Gambling? A silent investor gone wrong? Was Melissa just a smokescreen for something much more serious? I started following the digital trail, logging in at odd hours, scanning receipts, comparing dates. At one point, I noticed 3 separate transactions for consultation fees to a company I'd never heard of, LLC, vaguely named, no website. When I searched deeper, it redirected to an overseas registry. That's when I really got scared. What if this wasn't just infidelity? What if he was laundering money? What if I was legally tied to something criminal? And the worst part? If he ran, I'd be the one left holding the debt. The woman at home. The one whose name was on every form. I had to act, but carefully. Because the more I uncovered, the more it became clear. I wasn't just cleaning up after a cheater. I was walking through a minefield. By now, I knew I couldn't trust anyone fully, not even some of the people who seemed helpful at first. His assistant suddenly stopped replying to me after our second call. A mutual friend who had always been close with both of us now seemed cagey, nervous even. And Chelsea? I tried reaching her directly through her firm. The receptionist paused when I said his name, then transferred me to voicemail. She never called back. I was being watched. Not literally, at least I don't think, but I was being managed, controlled. Information was being funneled, limited, curated. I realized the people around him weren't just bystanders. Some were actively helping him. Maybe not in the cheating, but definitely in the cover-up. And the scariest part? I didn't know who I could trust anymore. So I kept playing dumb. I kept cooking, cleaning, being sweet. I started dropping fake hints, asking about getting a puppy, suggesting a second honeymoon, making plans he would never commit to. I watched his discomfort grow. And that's when I knew he wasn't just ready to leave. He already had a plan. He was just waiting for the right moment to execute it. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't see behind my carefully crafted smile, was that I had a plan too. A plan that would make sure when he walked away from me, he walked straight into a storm. And that storm? It was going to start with the very thing he thought I'd never touch. His finances. His hidden accounts. His offshore plans. His little secrets. I wasn't going to fight for the house or the car. I didn't want alimony or tears. I wanted precision. I wanted silence. I wanted to make one move that would change the entire trajectory of his new, happy life. And when it landed, it wouldn't be loud or dramatic. It would be invisible, unstoppable, and absolutely devastating. But how I pulled that off, and how I made sure the woman he left me for inherited not just his heart, but his entire mess, that's the part you're going to want to sit down for. Because it wasn't just revenge. It was surgical, strategic. And the twist? Oh, it's coming. Because what I discovered next about Melissa, well, let's just say, even I didn't see that part coming. Do you want me to continue with the next suspenseful part? Just when I thought I had the upper hand, just when the puzzle pieces were starting to lock into place, something strange happened. One morning, I opened my encrypted backup folder on the cloud where I'd been storing every document, every screenshot, every email trail I had quietly collected over the last few months. And the folder was empty.
Gone.
Wiped clean. My heart dropped into my stomach. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Maybe I'd logged into the wrong drive. Maybe the sync was delayed. But after checking and rechecking from 3 different devices, it became clear someone had accessed it and deleted everything. Everything. It wasn't just inconvenient, it was terrifying. Because that folder was hidden under a coded label, password protected, 2-factor authentication enabled. Someone had to know exactly what they were looking for. And if they knew where to look, they knew what I knew. I started retracing my steps, thinking of who might have had access to my devices. The only other person who ever used my laptop was him, but that hadn't happened in weeks. Still, I changed every password, logged out of every synced app, and locked everything behind new security walls. I couldn't afford another breach. That loss set me back weeks. All the evidence I had, poof. I still had a few hard copies, some printed bank statements, a few voice notes saved on an external recorder, but the bigger story, the timeline, the full picture was gone. It was a violation, not just of privacy but of control. And that's when I started wondering if someone close to me was feeding him information, watching my moves, pretending to be on my side, while quietly dismantling everything I was building. My first suspicion was Julie, my so-called best friend since college. She'd always been supportive, or so I thought. But in the past few weeks, she had started acting oddly. Overly interested in what I was doing, asking questions she never used to ask. One evening, while sipping wine at my kitchen table, she casually mentioned Melissa's last name, something I had never told her. When I asked how she knew it, she brushed it off with a laugh, saying she must have seen it on social media or something. But Melissa had no public accounts. She was a ghost online, by design. And I hadn't shared that detail with anyone. That's when it hit me. Julie might not be as clueless as she pretended to be. A few days later, a manila envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address. Inside were 2 photos. One was of me sitting at a cafe across from a man I'd met once, an independent financial consultant I had been referred to by someone anonymous online. The second photo was of my car parked outside that consultant's office. On the back of each photo was a scribbled warning in thick black marker. Stop digging. That's it. No signature, no context. I stood there on my front porch, staring at the photos, my hands trembling. Someone was watching me. Someone who wanted me to back off. And worse, someone who had the resources to track my every move. This wasn't just about a cheating husband anymore. This was about secrets, real ones, things buried deeper than a simple affair. But fear didn't stop me. If anything, it made me sharper. I started meeting people in public places, never visiting the same location twice. I paid cash for everything, used burner phones, wore hats and sunglasses even on cloudy days. Paranoia, maybe. But something told me I wasn't just being cautious, I was being hunted. I began connecting dots I hadn't noticed before. His frequent disappearances. His sudden silence after certain meetings. The new business partner who always refused to meet me, even socially. Then came the night I discovered the old voicemail. One I must have missed during the chaos. It was from over a year ago. A woman's voice, shaky, rushed. She never gave her name. Just said, "If you're hearing this, he's already gone too far. Don't trust anyone close to him. Especially not the one who claims to be fixing things." The voice haunted me. Who was she? Was she someone from his past? Someone who had already been burned by him, left behind like I was about to be? Or was she still around, trapped in her own web, trying to send me a warning from the shadows? That message made everything feel different, darker, more layered. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was about control, manipulation, possibly even danger. And suddenly, everyone around me looked suspicious. I couldn't trust Julie. I couldn't trust our mutual friends. Even my brother-in-law, who had always been polite but distant, started asking me weirdly specific questions about our finances and if I had lawyered up yet. Why would he care? Unless someone had roped him into this too. After all, family loyalties shift when money's involved. That night, I sat alone in my bedroom, scrolling through old photos from happier times. Birthdays, vacations, holiday dinners. And there, buried among the digital memories, was a shot I had forgotten. It was taken 2 Christmases ago, me, my husband, Julie, and another man. A man I didn't recognize at first. But then it hit me. He was in one of the recent photos from the tracking envelope. Same face, same scar under his eye. He wasn't just a friend of a friend. He had been around longer than I realized. Watching. Embedded in our circle. Suddenly the lines between friend and foe, ally and threat, blurred beyond recognition. I wasn't sure if I had stumbled into a carefully orchestrated trap, or if I had been living in one this whole time. But the real twist? It wasn't what I found. It was what I didn't. Because after digging through the last few bank statements I had left, a curious detail jumped out at me. A recurring monthly payment, small, just a few $100s, marked as consulting services. But the name of the recipient wasn't a company. It was a person. A name I hadn't seen in years. And when I looked closer, something inside me turned cold. It was the name of someone from my past. Someone I thought I'd never hear from again. Someone I once trusted with everything. And now they were back. Do you want me to continue with the next twist and reveal who this person is? The name on that bank transaction haunted me for days. Olivia Hart. I hadn't seen or spoken to her in nearly 8 years. Not since the fallout that quietly tore us apart like old wallpaper peeling from the edges. Olivia wasn't just a friend from my past. She was once my closest confidant. The woman I shared every secret with before marriage took us down different paths. Back then, we were inseparable. Our lives interwoven with promises of loyalty no matter what. Until one summer, everything unraveled. There were whispers that she had been involved with someone she shouldn't have been, someone married. And though she never admitted it, the signs were there. Late-night calls she wouldn't explain, sudden withdrawals from our circle, a cryptic resignation from her job without warning. It wasn't until years later, long after we had drifted apart, that I found out who the man was, my husband's former business partner. The same man who vanished under murky circumstances after their joint venture mysteriously went bankrupt. Back then, I chalked it up to coincidence. Now, I wasn't so sure. I stared at the payment record again and again, wondering what possible connection Olivia could still have to all of this. Why was my husband sending her money every month like clockwork? Was she blackmailing him? Helping him hide assets? Or worse, was she helping him keep me in the dark? I debated reaching out, but didn't have the nerve. Not yet. Not when I didn't know what role she truly played in this intricate mess. So I dug instead. I traced her address from an old contact list, only to find out she had moved a year ago. Her phone number disconnected. Her social media presence? Non-existent. It was like she'd vanished. Or been made to vanish. Then out of nowhere I got a call. Not from Olivia, but from my cousin Rachel, someone who hadn't been remotely involved in any of this until now. Her voice was tight with panic, breathless in that way people sound when they're trying not to lose control. She said she received an envelope just like I had. Photos. Of her. Taken from behind, while she was walking her dog. Another from a cafe window while she was having lunch with a friend. On the back of her photos, the same message scrawled in block letters. Stop digging. Only Rachel wasn't involved in any of this, or so I thought. That's when she admitted something I didn't see coming. A few months ago, she had introduced my husband to someone she knew from her yoga class, a financial strategist who claimed to help men in high-risk marriages protect themselves before a split.
It was supposed to be harmless, she said.
Just advice, just a contact. She had no idea it would spiral into whatever this had become. But now she was being followed too.
Tracked.
And like me, she felt the walls starting to close in. The fact that someone was threatening her now proved this wasn't just about my marriage, it was something broader, more orchestrated. Someone out there was working overtime to make sure no one helped me. No one looked too closely.
But why?
What was so dangerous about the truth that even Rachel, a total outsider, had to be silenced? I started to think maybe this wasn't just a personal betrayal anymore. Maybe it had always been something bigger. Something about money.
Power.
Secrets that predated the affair, possibly even our marriage. The more I tried to unravel it, the deeper the layers grew. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. No words, just a single image. A scanned copy of a prenuptial agreement. My prenuptial agreement. Only this version looked different from the one I remembered signing. It had new clauses, pages I'd never seen. And one clause in particular made my blood run cold. It stated that in the event of a divorce triggered by irreconcilable differences, I would forfeit all claims to shared property acquired during the marriage, including real estate, vehicles, and investment accounts. I knew immediately something was wrong. That wasn't in the original contract. I remembered reading it line by line with my attorney present. This was a forgery, or a modified version planted to be used against me if things went legal. My heart pounded as I realized just how far someone was willing to go to cut me out entirely. This wasn't just about hurting me emotionally. It was about erasing me from my own life. Worse still, I couldn't prove it wasn't authentic. My copy of the prenup had been in the safe, which was recently reorganized by my husband after claiming we needed to digitize all documents. He'd offered to handle it. I let him. Stupid. That physical copy might have been the only thing protecting me, and now it was probably gone. Or replaced with this fake version. I tried contacting my old lawyer, but her office was closed. Temporarily shut down for a family emergency, the receptionist said. When I asked for her cell, I was told she was unreachable for the week. The timing felt too convenient. Too planned. And then came the real gut punch. I received an email from Olivia. No greeting. No explanation. Just 4 words. You need to stop. Attached was an old photograph of the two of us from years ago, sitting on her porch with glasses of wine and wild laughter in our eyes. It was the last photo I ever took with her. And below that image was a line of text I didn't recognize at first. It was a password. A login to a Dropbox folder. I clicked it. Inside was a single video file. I hesitated before pressing play, unsure what kind of Pandora's box I was about to open. But I needed answers. And what I saw was him. My husband. Sitting in a dimly lit room. Speaking to someone off camera. Talking about a transfer, something that has to happen before she finds out.
His voice was calm.
Calculated. Not frantic like someone hiding an affair, but measured like someone hiding something far more valuable. He mentioned dates.
Codes.
A name I didn't recognize, Elridge. Then, just before the clip ended, he looked straight at the camera, as if suddenly aware he was being recorded, and whispered, "She'll never see it coming." But I had. And now, I couldn't unsee it. Yet nothing in the video answered the deeper questions. Who was filming? Why had Olivia been in possession of it? And if she was trying to warn me, why now? Why not before? And what exactly was he transferring? Money? Ownership? Identity? Every answer led to more confusion, more questions, more shadows pulling me deeper into a story that no longer felt like it belonged to me alone. But the most disturbing part wasn't in what he said. It was in what I recognized on the table in front of him. A red file folder. The same kind his lawyer used. And etched in the corner, barely visible under the poor lighting, was my name. He wasn't just planning to leave. He had been planning something for years. And now, I wasn't sure who Olivia was trying to protect, me or herself. Would you like me to continue unraveling this deeper betrayal? The next morning, I woke up to a silence that didn't feel right. Not just quiet, but unnaturally still, like the world outside my windows was holding its breath. The kind of silence that makes your skin tighten before you even know why. It was still early, the sun barely pushing through the blinds, and I could feel something was off even before my feet hit the floor. I walked down the hall toward the kitchen, instinctively checking my phone. 5 missed calls. All from Rachel. My stomach dropped. I called her back immediately, pacing barefoot across the cold tile. No answer. Not even a ring. Just straight to voicemail. I tried again, then again.
Still nothing.
I rushed to text her, only to find my last message had been left undelivered since the night before. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the way my pulse started pounding in my ears, louder than the refrigerator hum, louder than anything else in the room. I threw on a coat and drove straight to her apartment across town. When I got there, the building lobby was empty, even though it was normally bustling by that hour. I buzzed her unit over and over, no response. I flagged down the mail carrier outside and asked if he'd seen her that morning. He shook his head and told me something that chilled me to the bone. Her car's been gone since yesterday, he said. She usually gets her mail around noon, but I didn't see her at all. I knew then it wasn't just a delay. Rachel hadn't just turned off her phone or stepped out. She was gone. I filed a missing person report that afternoon, and as expected, the process was frustratingly slow. Maybe she needed space, the officer said without looking up from his screen. Adults disappear for all kinds of reasons. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him and say, she was threatened, just like me. But there was no proof. No photos, no text, nothing that would convince anyone that Rachel didn't just walk away from her life. But I knew my cousin. She wouldn't go radio silent like that. Not without warning me. Not with everything going on. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every shadow on the wall felt like it was moving. I kept thinking of that video Olivia sent, the cold whisper of his voice. She'll never see it coming. Was this what he meant? Was this how far he was willing to go? I replayed everything in my head. Every moment. Every red flag I brushed aside. Every odd phone call. Every lie. It all came back with horrifying clarity. And now, Rachel was gone, and I was the only one left holding the truth that no one wanted uncovered. By the third day, I started noticing someone watching me. At first, it was just a feeling, the kind that prickles at the back of your neck when you know you're not alone. Then it was the same black SUV, parked a few houses down, engine running with tinted windows, there in the morning, and again at night. Once, I left the house through the side yard and came back around just to see if I was imagining it. The SUV was still there, headlights off, not moving. I walked toward it, phone in hand, pretending to take a picture of the sky. But before I could get close, it drove off slowly, deliberately. Not fast enough to be fleeing, just enough to remind me they knew I saw them. That was when the paranoia started to eat at me. Was my phone bugged? Were my emails tracked? Was someone already inside my house, watching me from some hidden camera I didn't know was there? I started unplugging everything, smart speakers, Wi-Fi routers, even the microwave. I moved through my house like it was foreign, like it belonged to someone else. I covered the windows at night and started sleeping with the bedroom door locked, clutching a heavy flashlight under the covers like a weapon. Every time my phone vibrated, my breath would catch. Every unknown number made my hands shake. I wasn't just scared, I was hunted. And the worst part? I didn't know why. What did I stumble on that was so dangerous? What was in that red file with my name on it? What had Rachel seen or done that made her vanish without a trace? And then came the package. It was left on my doorstep in broad daylight, no postage, no return address. Inside was a single item, a copy of Rachel's driver's license, burned around the edges, like it had been pulled from a fire. Taped to it was a note. Just 4 words. This is your warning. My legs gave out right there on the porch. My mind reeled. It wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't even about betrayal. This was control, intimidation, erasure. And whoever was behind it was now daring me to continue, daring me to defy them. I couldn't go to the police. I didn't have hard evidence, just fragments, hunches, burned photos, and ghost trails of clues that didn't add up to anything concrete. And I couldn't go to anyone else. Julie had disappeared from my life. Olivia was unreadable, and now Rachel, possibly the only innocent in this whole mess, was gone. I was alone, completely alone. And the deeper I sank into this mystery, the more it felt like I had been chosen, not accidentally, but deliberately. Like I was a piece in someone's game, a test subject in some cruel psychological maze. Every clue I found led to a dead end. Every person I trusted was either compromised, missing, or too afraid to help. And all I had were shadows. Shadows of secrets, of transactions, of names I didn't recognize and motives I couldn't decipher. But the scariest realization came late one night, while I sat at my kitchen table staring at Rachel's burned ID. I wasn't the only one being watched. I was being studied. My movements. My reactions. My next steps. Like someone was waiting to see what I would do next. Not to stop me, but to measure me. To see if I'd back down or push forward. And that was when it hit me. This wasn't about my husband anymore. He was part of it, yes, but there was something else. A bigger engine humming beneath all of this. A network, a scheme, a machine that had been moving long before I knew anything was wrong. And now I was in its path. But the last thing I found that night changed everything. A new email arrived, no subject, no sender. Just a single line. You're looking at the wrong man. And, with that, everything I thought I knew came undone. Shall I continue and reveal what deeper mystery this message leads her to? I must have read that email a dozen times, each word vibrating louder in my head than the last. You're looking at the wrong man. At first, I didn't believe it. Couldn't. Every breadcrumb I'd followed, every sleepless night and trembling revelation, it all pointed to him. My husband. The man who betrayed me, manipulated me, discarded me. But something about that message burrowed under my skin like a splinter I couldn't pull out. Who would send that? And, more importantly, why now, after everything? It felt like someone was laughing at me from the shadows, someone who knew I was too deep in this to climb out, and now they wanted to twist the knife even deeper. But what if it wasn't just a taunt? What if they were right? That question chased me into the next morning, and all the way through the quiet hours of a long afternoon. And it was during that fog of exhaustion and confusion that I did something I hadn't done in a while. I went back to the very beginning. Not just the affair, not the betrayal, but further. Years back. To when things first started feeling off. Long before the texts and the secret meetings. Long before Melissa ever entered the picture. I pulled out an old photo album from our early years, flipping through faded pictures of vacations, family parties, birthdays. And then I found it, tucked between 2 pages of our anniversary trip to Lake Tahoe, a receipt. A small, almost crumpled proof of payment from a corporate law firm. Not our lawyer. Not anyone I'd recognized. The date on it sent a chill through me. Nearly a year before the affair began, when things were still seemingly normal. I never remembered seeing it before. He had hidden it, maybe slipped it into the album by accident, assuming I'd never dig that deep. But what was he doing at a corporate law firm a full year before our marriage cracked? I searched the firm online. Their specialty? Not divorce. Not real estate. Corporate restructuring. More specifically, shell companies, asset shielding, and executive litigation. I called a friend of mine who used to intern at a finance firm and asked her to dig. A few hours later, she called me back sounding rattled. He's not listed as a client, she said, but the firm has connections to someone else. When she told me the name, I felt my throat tighten. Julie. My best friend. The same Julie who had suddenly gone quiet. The same Julie who once offered to help me organize my financials when I got overwhelmed. She had access. She had motive. And now, she had a link to a law firm that specialized in burying paper trails. But that wasn't the worst of it. That night, I finally found the courage to email Olivia. I didn't ask questions. I didn't accuse. I just wrote, "If you know something I don't, you owe me the truth." I wasn't expecting a response. But less than an hour later, a message came through, short, direct, like she'd been waiting to hit send. He isn't the one behind it. He was being used, too. They're not after your marriage. They're after the inheritance. My blood ran cold. What inheritance? My parents had died broke, my husband's family wasn't wealthy, and I didn't have some forgotten uncle with oil money waiting to be claimed. But then I remembered something. A year ago, a great aunt I barely knew passed away. She lived in Vermont, a recluse who'd gone off the grid for decades. I attended her funeral out of obligation. My name had been mentioned once during the legal reading of her estate, but I was told everything had been claimed by a trust, and I wasn't part of it. Or at least, that's what the attorney had said. I hadn't thought about that day in months, but now it started to click. What if I had been lied to? What if someone had redirected the trust? What if all this, the marriage, the betrayal, the disappearance of Rachel, wasn't about love or heartbreak at all? What if it was about money I didn't even know I had? The walls around my understanding started to shake. I pulled every document I had from that time, scanned every letter. I found the lawyer's name, Stephen Myers, and when I looked him up, his firm had dissolved months ago. Not because of retirement. Because of fraud. Financial manipulation. Misappropriation of estates. My head spun. I couldn't breathe. That firm had been tied to Julie's law contact, the same woman I'd been told was helping with a private investment. Chelsea. Chelsea wasn't just a random advisor or a side character in my husband's twisted fantasy. She was a key player, a handler, someone tasked with redirecting money through complicated channels, offshore holdings, trusts, LLCs. And Melissa? She wasn't just the girl who stole my husband. She was Chelsea's niece. I found the link buried deep in an alumni newsletter online, a college award they both attended. The caption read, Chelsea Underwood, keynote speaker, joined by her niece and rising finance grad, Melissa Hart. Same smile, same eyes, different last names. One orchestrated the chaos. The other played the distraction. And my husband? He was never the mastermind. He was the puppet. Now everything started to fall into place. The sudden business trips. The second apartment. The coaching he claimed to offer other men going through tough marriages. He was being used, pushed to make decisions that looked selfish on the surface, but were actually positioning him to sign over rights, assets, and investments that I never even knew existed. Julie had worked the friendship angle. Chelsea worked the legal one. Melissa, the emotional. They had cornered him, played on his ego, and used my marriage as camouflage. And the final blow? That red file, the one in the video with my name on it, it wasn't just a divorce strategy. It was a complete identity shift. A plan to transfer my share of the hidden estate under false legal pretenses to a holding company in Delaware. A company I'd just discovered had Julie listed as the secondary beneficiary. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. The villain I chased wasn't the one pulling the strings. And now, I had no idea who I could trust. Not even Olivia. Not even myself. Because if they've already gone this far, what won't they do next? Do you want me to continue into the next chapter, where she confronts one of the real masterminds? It all came down to that night. The night I stopped being afraid. The night I realized the only way to end this was to walk straight into the fire and confront whatever or whoever had built this web around my life. The fear, the stalking, the threats, none of it mattered anymore. I had nothing left to lose. Rachel was still missing, Olivia had gone silent again, and every official path I'd tried had been quietly blocked by people who either wouldn't help or had already been paid to look the other way. I had spent weeks being careful, but careful wasn't working. So I decided to go where it all started, back to the firm Chelsea once worked with, the one listed on that hidden corporate restructuring receipt I found in the album. I didn't make an appointment. I didn't announce myself. I walked through the front doors like I owned the place, clutching the flash drive I had compiled, the one with every piece of evidence I'd collected, bank transfers, altered documents, surveillance footage, and one critical recording I had finally pieced together. The receptionist tried to stop me, but I kept walking, demanding to speak with Chelsea. I knew she wasn't on record anymore, that she had quietly stepped away when things got too hot. But I also knew where she was. In the conference room, right where I wanted her. When she saw me, her expression didn't falter. No surprise. No guilt. Just that same calm, cold confidence she wore like designer perfume. She motioned for the others in the room to leave, and we were alone. Just the two of us and the weight of 1,000 lies sitting between us. I slid the flash drive across the table. I know everything, I said, and for the first time, her jaw tightened. I don't know what you think you've found, she began, but I cut her off. I know about the trust, the inheritance. I know about Julie, about Melissa, about the LLCs, about the way you coached my husband into signing over control without him even realizing what he was doing. I know you used his affair as a distraction while you redirected funds and identities like chess pieces. And I know you made Rachel disappear because she found out too much. She stayed silent, watching me, calculating. But it was in her eyes, just a flicker, but enough to confirm what I needed to know. Then I hit play on my phone. The audio crackled to life. It was a recording of my husband from months ago, one I had recovered from an old backup, the original untouched and authentic. He was speaking with Chelsea. I had cleaned it up with help from someone Olivia sent me to, an ex-NSA tech specialist. The conversation was clear. Chelsea was laying out the plan to shift ownership of a dormant trust into Julie's shell company, forging my signature and leaving me legally powerless. My husband had hesitated. "She's going to notice," he said in the recording. "She's not stupid." And Chelsea's response had sealed it. "By the time she figures it out, she'll be too isolated to stop us." I paused the recording. Let the silence stretch. Chelsea leaned back, folding her hands. "You've made a lot of noise," she said. "But noise doesn't equal proof. You don't have a legal leg to stand on. And if you think this is going to get you back what you think you're owed, you're mistaken. You were never the target. You were just in the way." That's when I smiled. Because she was wrong. I had already sent the flash drive to 2 attorneys, 3 journalists, and 1 federal contact with ties to financial crimes investigations. But I hadn't told her that yet. I wanted to watch her unravel. So instead, I leaned in and said, "You forgot the most important part." She blinked. "What's that?" "You left a trail." And then, like it had been choreographed from the start, the door opened. 2 plainclothes federal agents stepped into the room, badges out. One of them nodded at me, then turned to Chelsea. "We need you to come with us." Her face went pale. Not because she was surprised to be caught, Chelsea was too smart for that, but because she hadn't seen it coming for me. I was supposed to be the discarded wife, the wounded woman crying in a lawyer's office. I wasn't supposed to fight back, but I did. And in that moment, I saw the truth, not just about her, but about the whole system. The game wasn't just about betrayal or money. It was about underestimating women like me. And I wasn't underestimated anymore. But just when I thought it was over, when I thought justice had finally cracked the surface of this twisted world, the final twist came, one that still leaves a pit in my stomach even now. As Chelsea was being let out, one of the agents leaned toward me and asked, "Do you know a woman named Olivia Hart?" I froze.
Yes.
"Why?" "She turned herself in this morning. She says she was the one who started this entire operation. That she's the one who recruited Chelsea and Julie. That she planned everything from the beginning." "Why would she do that?" I whispered. The agent hesitated, then said, "Because the trust you're fighting for? The money, the inheritance? It was hers. She forged the paperwork to make it look like your great-aunt left it to you. She needed your name to move it without raising red flags. You weren't the victim. You were the asset." And just like that, everything I thought I knew collapsed all over again. Would you like the final resolution in the aftermath, or should we end the story right here, on this shocking reveal? The days that followed unraveled like the final pages of a story I never asked to star in, but one that had etched itself into every corner of my life. Olivia's confession turned everything upside down again. She didn't just mastermind the financial scheme. She had orchestrated nearly every step that led me into the illusion of control. According to the agents who debriefed me in a bland, windowless room filled with recordings and redacted files, Olivia had spent years identifying vulnerable trusts, old estates with legal gray zones, and unwitting individuals who could be used as legal fronts. I was never chosen because of who I was selected because of who I wasn't. I didn't have powerful family backing, didn't come from old money, and had just enough tragedy in my past to make it believable that a great-aunt could have left me something substantial without anyone blinking. My entire marriage, in a sick way, had been her playground. She had quietly influenced every person in my life through subtle manipulation, Julie's loyalty, Chelsea's strategy, even Melissa's role as a convenient wedge. Olivia had been the architect. Everyone else was just part of her blueprint. And yet, through all that revelation, my husband's face haunted me most. The footage, the voice recordings, his frightened eyes in the final clip. He hadn't been innocent, but he hadn't been the monster I thought, either. He was a pawn who thought he was a king, lured by promises of financial freedom, manipulated through flattery and fear. When everything began to collapse, he panicked. He tried to take control, but by then, Olivia had already decided to burn the board. He lost everything, his reputation, his finances, his pride, and in the end, he fled. I received a letter from him weeks after Chelsea's arrest, postmarked from somewhere in South America. No return address. It wasn't an apology, not really. Just a bitter reflection on how easy it had been to give up what mattered for something that never truly existed. Rachel was found alive. That was the one piece of hope I clung to during the chaos. She'd been taken, not in a violent, cinematic way, but lured under false pretenses by someone pretending to be from a federal agency. They had told her they needed her protection while they built their case. But in truth, they were isolating her, keeping her away from me while the final stages of the financial transfer were executed. When authorities found her, she was in a wellness retreat in Arizona, confused, exhausted, but physically unharmed. When we saw each other again, there were no words, just the kind of silence that only comes when the weight of everything that could have gone wrong finally lifts, even for a moment. In the end, Olivia was convicted, along with Chelsea and several others who played various roles in laundering the estate and manipulating legal channels. Julie turned state's witness in exchange for immunity, something I'll never fully forgive her for. She reached out once, asking to meet and clear the air. I never responded. Some betrayals don't deserve explanation. Some people, no matter how long they've known you, choose themselves when it counts most. I let her letter sit in a drawer, unopened, because there's peace in choosing silence over vengeance. As for the trust, the one that had been illegally transferred under my name, it was tied up in litigation for months. Eventually, I received a small settlement, far less than what had been stolen, but enough to start fresh. I didn't care about the money anymore. The real victory wasn't in the account balance, it was in getting my life back, in seeing the truth behind the curtain, in knowing that I wasn't crazy or naive. I had been targeted, manipulated, and nearly erased, but I came out of it clearer, sharper, more myself than I had ever been. I moved to a smaller town near the coast, where I didn't have to look over my shoulder anymore. I started journaling, then writing full chapters, and eventually turned the experience into a manuscript. Not a memoir, not really, but something between truth and fiction, because sometimes the line between the two blurs too much to name. I changed the names, the locations, but the core of it, the warning, the insight, the grit, it was all mine. It turns out there's a growing audience for stories about betrayal, identity theft, and high-stakes manipulation, especially among viewers looking up phrases like how to protect your assets during divorce, financial abuse in marriage, and signs you're being set up. My story became a cautionary tale, one that found a home in podcasts, articles, and late-night YouTube spirals. But the final twist, the one I still wrestle with when the wind howls too hard against my windows, came not in a courtroom or confrontation, but in a single envelope that arrived months later. No return address, just a single sheet of paper. It was a birth certificate. Not mine. Not my husband's. Olivia's. It listed my great-aunt's name as the mother. The math didn't make sense at first, but when it did, I sank into the chair like gravity had changed. Olivia wasn't just a predator. She was family. It explained everything. Why I was chosen. Why she'd watched me for so long. Why the trust had been real, but redirected. Maybe she thought she was reclaiming what was rightfully hers. Maybe it wasn't greed, but vengeance, twisted and buried in silence for decades. I'll never know. The case is closed, the agents have moved on, and my life has taken a quieter shape now. But every so often, I see her face in my dreams. Watching. Waiting. And I wonder if, in some corner of the world, she still believes she was the one who was wronged. Because in stories like mine, no one ever really wins. They just survive. And sometimes, that's the most powerful ending of all.